What's up, Internet? My name's Nerdy.
And I'm Clarus.
And this is a movie review. No reaction today, because this movie just came out on Thursday. But we saw Dune.
Yep.
Part 2.
Sure did.
And Part 1. We watched Part 1 again on Friday night, and then saw Dune on Saturday.
Is this a new shirt?
Yeah. I mean, I've never worn it before, but I've had it for a while.
I like it.
Cool.
I got distracted. I thought it was your star shirt, but it's not. It was a surprise. Yeah. We didn't get a popcorn bucket.
They didn't have the popcorn bucket.
I know. It was very sad.
Yeah, but I remember... oh, wow. I don't know why I'm wearing this. If you saw our Dune Part 1 review, I was like, I like this. But I need to, watch the full movie, which is Part 1 and Part 2, to know if I think this is good.
Which, weirdly enough, I don't think it is the full movie, because isn't there a Part 3?
That's a separate book, though. That is the next... this is the culmination of the first book.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
And
yeah.
I am happy to say that I liked it. I think that this is the Part 2 that I wanted following the Part 1. I think that it improves upon the things that I didn't love as much about Part 1, but kept all the things that I thought were already excellent in Part 1. And I just thought that it was an excellent second chapter in the Denis Dune cinematic universe.
Yeah. Before we get into, spoilers, I think
we'll do a non-spoiler beginning.
Yeah, the general consensus between the two of us, that is general, I guess, it was pretty good. I really didn't love Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
But I think that Dune Part 2 was much better. My criticism from Part 1 still stands, that it's too long and drags.
It's very long.
I don't think the movie has pacing.
It does sometimes.
Sure. But other than that, I really liked most other things. When it was good, it was great. So I had a good time, even though I definitely was checking what time it is, because I was it's only been 90 minutes. It feels like 3 hours.
I think that what's interesting about Dune Part 2 is that the only person in Dune Part 1 that felt like they were having any fun to me was Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
Who, spoilers for Part 1, is not in this
Doesn't
movie.
make it.
And so I was a little bit going into this wondering where that comedic element of the movie was going to come from. Because I think that if you're going to put a 3-hour movie on screen, it's got to be funny at least some of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to sit through a fucking dirge. And really surprising to me, Javier Bardem was the comedic light at the end of the tunnel in this. That his Stilgar and the way that Stilgar approaches his reverence for Paul and his belief, we'll call it, in Paul, became a very genuine and sincere character that was so well played by Javier Bardem, but that was played through the acting and through the editing, especially the editing, for a level of comedy that I did not expect from this film, but that, in my opinion, helped with the length of it in a way that I didn't find Dune Part 1 as funny as I found this movie.
No, yeah.
And so some of that, it being a little bit slow and long, was alleviated by the fact that there was this running joke, weirdly, with Stilgar's character that I thought was genuinely excellent. Our whole theater, and we were at a packed screening on a Saturday night, our theater was laughing together in a way that I didn't experience in the first film.
No.
And so I think that moments like that, I also think the action in this movie is considerably more interesting to watch.
Yes.
There's also more of it, but the big combat sequence in Dune 1 to me is very sterile in its presentation of the factual events of this battle, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that Dune 2's action had a lot more emotion. There was a lot more narrative within a combat sequence in terms of the arc of that battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the really character-driven combat in this movie.
Yeah.
That along with just excellent choreography, which the first movie had, but I just think that they stepped up their game in how they shot it, and the already beautiful movie had a little bit more movement in those action scenes in a way that I thought really, really worked.
Yeah, I'll agree 100%. I think that the action, the combat, the fight choreography all was stellar. Definitely the strongest parts for me, and I think the biggest noticeable improvement, because part 1 was fine. I don't think it was like bad.
No.
Right? Like it wasn't. Yeah, it was like serviceable. I got the gist of it, but this one just felt like it had a lot more impact emotionally, and felt more like everyone in the theater was kind of on edge.
Yeah.
Like anticipating the next series of blows, and like when characters would come back to one another, or even like big like explosion type things like that. Even that all was dealt. It just felt more emotionally driven in Dune 2.
Yeah, and I think that stuff was really excellent. I think the returning cast are all wonderful. I think that Timothée Chalamet is so much more of a character in this movie than I felt like he was in the first one.
He was great.
And I think that he really carried it. I do think that the movie at times resorts to yelling acting stuff in a way that is a transplant for charisma that I don't know that always works. I think that I liked it, but it was one of the things about the performances across the board that I was like, this isn't going to resonate with everyone. Yeah. And I think that for the people that this choice doesn't work for, it's going to take them out of this film. But it didn't really do that for me. It was just noticeable at times that people would suddenly just like yell stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they'd be like, oh, they're so charismatic. I'm like, they just kind of yelled. The other criticism that I think that I would have for this movie is the way in which Chani... Zendaya is great in this character. I think that she does a really good job, particularly in the first half of the movie. And then there's a point where the movie, I think in an effort to modernize the narrative of Dune, starts to just have her be just scowling for the rest of the movie. And I think that it leads to the biggest change, I think, from the series of changes in the second half of this movie that are vast departures from the book and from the original film, the David Lynch movie, that make Chani her character becomes less and less important to the plot throughout the film. And it's unfortunate because I think that the performance Zendaya is giving in the build-up to kind of that friction is really great. Yeah. And I would have loved to have seen her get a little bit more to do in the back half of the film.
Yeah, I will agree with that as well. Especially because she wasn't in most of like part one, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She kind of like isn't there and then is very present and wonderful, and then kind of it fizzles out a little bit as well.
And it's in service of okay, but before we get into spoilers, I just want to say I've never seen Austin Butler in anything before. He was great. Fade Routha was incredible.
Great. Well done.
He is a damn good actor. The Stellan Skarsgård's accent he puts on is sublime. I thought Josh Brolin as Gunny coming back was awesome. Mm-hmm. I guess that's kind of a spoiler, but he's in the movie. Like, he's on the poster.
Yeah, he's in the poster and I think the trailer as well, so yeah. I don't think that's a spoiler, yeah.
Lady Jessica was awful in the best way. A perfect performance of a genuinely terrible person. And I want to say before we get into the spoilers, I left this movie very depressed. And so, good job, Denis Villeneuve. You crushed Dune.
You did it. Yeah, you did the thing.
I genuinely am concerned by people who are like, wow, that was really fun. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, but you don't understand what happened.
Yeah, I stand with Paul. And you're like, yeah, yikes.
This movie was a blast. I'm like, oh, that's a
people got
that's a
blasted.
Choice.
Yeah.
It's a the galaxy-wide tragedy that plays out with death and destruction for millions and then billions. But yeah, no, it's so fun.
So fun. Dune, very fun. Very fun.
It's kind of like the people are like, no, Attack on Titan's really fun. And I'm like, is it? It's
They're
not
like, Aaron
fun.
Yeager was right. And you're like, oh boy, okay, here we go.
All right, let's get into spoilers. This movie's very good, but I want to talk a little bit deeper into some of the things about it. Because one of the big changes that this book or the movie makes from the story of Dune is that Chani and Paul don't have a kid in this movie, and that kid does not die, which is such a big part of the books pushing Paul into the battle, right? Like Leto II's death is this like because the Siege is blown up, yes, but in the movie the Siege is empty when it's blown up, and so it didn't have a yes. A house
it wasn't empty. No.
Yeah, it was.
No,
there was only one person in it. And
no. No, there was not. No,
they show nobody dying in that sequence.
Correct.
The artillery bombing is so sterile.
Yes.
In the book, Paul and Chani's son dies there, and that's what. And Paul, boom.
Is that in book 1?
Yeah. And then Paul, and then that's the Messiah shit, right?
Yeah. So the one thing that is weird is definitely that they don't show anyone dying in the Siege. They kind of show the main crew who's been attacking the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
They are out of the Siege and they see it kind of get attacked from afar, and then they go and they kind of help pull a couple people out of it, and then they leave. And there isn't really any huge there's not this period of mourning really. Everyone's just kind of oh yeah, our home got destroyed, I guess we're going south.
And so the decision around Chani's character in this, that she kind of immediately is against the whole Messiah thing, and that she just is always against it, to the point where at the end of the movie she rides off into the sunset by herself. I think that it is this movie trying to be oh well, we wanted Chani to have an agency that she doesn't have in the books.
Yeah.
And so it's just it is a pretty massive change from the source material in terms of what they're doing with this character. And I felt that I felt that if you're gonna have her have this ride off into the sunset moment, I would have loved more time with her in the second half of the movie where she's dealing with the fact that Paul is having this rise.
Yes.
Because we get an amazing scene in the Sandworm Temple, where she uses her tear to bring him back, and it's a beautiful moment, and we get the moment of her yelling in the cave about how don't believe in messiahs.
Yeah, in the first half we get lots of great moments. Them alone in the tent, her teaching him, they have a lot there that is kind of just abandoned later on.
But it's just that her two big moments, she just kind of yells at people how she's feeling about stuff. And other than that, it's a lot of shots of her scowling. And I just think that the beginning of the movie kind of sets up her group of friends a little bit. And I think a little bit of time away from Paul with her and them in the second half of the movie would have been nice.
Yeah.
I think that more time with the Fremen in this movie would have been nice. They are, they're at the center of this narrative in such a huge way.
But there's only two main Fremen characters, which are Chani and Stilgar.
And they're great. And there's so many supporting Fremen characters in the background of this.
Yeah.
But I did feel a little bit like the narrative was so focused on Paul and Jessica, and I think that we could have opened up to the Fremen a little bit more and elevated a few more Fremen voices and a few more Fremen opinions about this, what becomes the jihad that they're about to go on. And that's my light criticism for a movie that I really enjoyed, right? I do think that there is this large culture at the center of this film. And within that criticism, I would also add, I would have loved to have seen more Middle Eastern North African actors in this film, more Islamic voices in a movie that is so deeply enriched in Islamic visuals and sounds and culture, the language of the Middle East, but the people who that language comes from are not really represented in this film in a way that I think that there would have been room for more Fremen people to have a little bit of a part. And I know Denis Villeneuve doesn't like dialogue. I get that. But I do. And so, that's just going to be a taste thing that is not a huge deterrent to the quality of the film.
Yeah.
But is one of the things that I noticed in hour 2 when I was yeah.
It is very much mileage may vary with this movie because, yes, the visuals are breathtaking. They are stunning. Everything is immaculately shot, immaculately planned. The action, the acting, all of those things. But it drags. It really it is long, and I swear you could cut like 45 minutes of it.
The one saving grace of the length of this movie is that at least when I was bored with how slowly the plot was moving,
You didn't miss anything.
the visuals are so stunning that like there were times when I was sitting there just admiring the craft of the film.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know that is the biggest compliment, because if I'm noticing that as much as I was in this film, it does mean that I've kind of tuned out and like I'm waiting for like the next scene to start because we've gotten information and now it's just sort of like a sweeping shot. But the craft of the film is perfect. I think that if you win a technical Oscar this year, you are lucky. I think that Dune Part 2 would have won every single technical award, and it's probably not close. And the only reason that it's not is because it got bumped out of November.
Yeah.
Like, this is the asterisk Oscar year for everything else, because they're just, the movie making on this scale doesn't exist anymore. So many other people resort to cheap CGI tricks, and so much of this film is practical. So much of the CGI is, when it is used, it is seamless and perfect. This movie is immaculate in its presentation of its visuals. And from the sandwriting moment, which is one of the coolest like cinematic sequences I've seen.
Sandwriting?
Yeah, when Paul's first sandworm riding moment is truly breathtaking.
Yeah.
Like, it is shot in a way that is just so beyond anything I expected.
Yes.
Especially because I was complaining that they showed it in the trailer.
Yeah.
And the actual sequence itself is so big and so, like, there's so much more to it that looking back on my feelings of showing that in the trailer, I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter that much, because there really is so much to that sequence that pulling a chunk out of it and putting the trailer doesn't impact it at all.
Yeah, for sure.
The other sequence that is breathtaking is the Getty Prime sequence, where when they go to Getty Prime for the birthday of Feyd-Rautha, and we see the black and white, the world bathed in a black sun and what that does and the coloring of that world.
Yeah, that was really cool.
The Feyd-Rautha fight is awesome. Like, Austin Butler is exemplary in this role. But the fireworks on Getty Prime were so goddamn cool.
I know. That was something that I was like, oh, like, I would never think of, like, how would you do fireworks in a world that has no color in it?
Yeah.
And, like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And it was, truly, like, a spectacle. That was one of the parts that really took my breath away, was how that whole planet looked and was interpreted. And, blown away. I thought that was incredible.
Some other surprising delights. I thought Christopher Walken brought it as the Emperor.
Yeah.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, he's not in it like a ton, but when he was, he freaking crushed it.
Yeah, and Florence Pugh as Irulan. I'm never going to get that right. I will be dyslexic about that name until I die. As the princess, she's wonderful. She is, I mean, she's Florence. She's so good in everything.
Yeah.
But everybody in this movie is, right? Like, are there people we haven't talked about?
No, I don't think so. Everyone is at, like, the top of their game. Everyone is peak.
Oh, no. You know who I haven't talked about who I thought was sublime? Dave Bautista.
Oh. He
is so special. And watching Robin completely devolve mentally throughout this movie. And go from being such a, like, confident, high-status character and just watching him, like, wither away into anger and then despair and then to just, like, this broken shell of a man who can't even fight. He finally gets the chance to fight at the end of this movie, and he has just been so broken by the film that he just can't even... He accomplishes nothing. And this is this, like, historic warrior... who, through just the weight of expectation and the pressure of this movie, devolves into a meaningless second for Gunny to kill him. It's a stellar performance. Yeah. And I think that Dave Bautista is weirdly, like, compiling this career in the background of all these things where people are like, oh shit, like, Dave Bautista's a fucking actor.
Yeah, he rocks this.
Yeah. He really does. I loved him a lot in this movie. And I'm not really surprised. Like Blade Runner 2049 told me he was amazing, but he's awesome here.
Yeah, I was very impressed. I've always really enjoyed him, and I think that people just know him for Drax, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just like what the kind of label that they slap on him, and I'm so happy to see him doing other things, and people being able to discover him through like other movies, different art.
Well, and even the Drax thing is so fascinating, right? Because the problem with Drax for him was that he is so good at that part.
Yeah.
And his comedic timing as Drax is so sublime.
Yeah.
That people were like, oh yeah, do that. That is...
And he's like,
That's
but
perfect.
I can do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also nails everything else that he does, right?
He does.
Like, he's in this weird position where, like, every time I see him do something, I'm like, oh, I would watch you do this forever. And he's like, no, but I want to do everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm down for that too, because you have it in you, right? If anyone doubts Dave Bautista at this point, after creating Drax, his performances across, like, Blade Runner, now this... If you're doubting Dave Bautista, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, the dude has range in a way that, like, none of the other wrestling actors do.
Yeah, not in a way that I've seen.
John Cena. Oh, actually, I might take that back. John Cena in Peacemaker is pretty fucking special.
Yeah, but I would say that John Cena in Peacemaker is closer to a kind of like more like Drax-like character in a sense. Like that show is like funny, but he is incredible in that. And don't get me wrong. I can't wait to see John Cena in more
serious stuff.
Yeah, more stuff like that. Let him have it because Dave Bautista did it. I think he can do it. I believe in him. No problem.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm trying to think if there's anything about this movie we haven't discussed. Oh,
the knife fight, I think,
the knife fight is great.
Really just like deserves all the awards, recommendations, like kudos, like whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That was
the final one between Paul and
Fade-Rautha.
Fade-Rautha, yeah.
Yeah, that
unreal
was one of the best like hand-to-hand combat scenes I've ever watched. Like an extended scene like that. I think that and between two people, right? I think I've seen some incredible combat where it's like one person who beats up a bunch of different people and it's like, wow, that's sick. But like this like one-on-one where they're clearly very evenly matched.
Yeah.
And the camera doesn't jump around 87 times to hide the fact that like the blows aren't landing, that it's stage combat. It never feels that way. It feels visceral and real. It feels meticulously rehearsed and so rehearsed and yet raw. Like it never felt like it was too clean.
No, it was very messy. Yeah, I loved it.
And that was like one of the best things about it. I was on the edge of my seat for that one, and I didn't want to blink because I didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah, I think that it's like weirdly an intimate moment in the movie, and that intimacy between the two men, and the way in which the characters watching are brought into that fight through dialogue is really exceptional. Yeah. It is an incredible fight. All of Fade-Rautha's action moments are like truly like awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. He was incredible.
Yeah, it is one of those films where like I don't know if it is a different kind of movie, and I don't know if the pacing is the best thing about it, but everything else is so good. And every actor is so committed to every beat that... And also Dune is such a big story that is so fucking insane. You know what I mean? It's bonkers. I don't know if you could do it better than this. And so, look, Dune is never going to be my favorite story. I am not a huge fan of the like, oh, well, the main character sees the future, so they're doing what the future is... warning that is Paul, right? This character is not an actual Messiah. He's a fake Messiah that the Bene Gesserit have created. And so this is a warning about following charismatic leaders. is a great story to me until Paul can actually see the future. And so for my taste, like the story will never be my favorite because I just don't resonate with characters that see the future and so they do awful things because the future tells them that they have to, or else an even more awful thing will happen. I always, I've been consistent on this. It's just not my favorite story. And so I think that Dune is never going to be my favorite story, but the production of this movie is immaculate. And so it made me like a kind of story that I typically don't resonate with more than I have with any other thing that is similar, Attack on Titan, things like that.
Yeah.
This is my favorite version of that story. And as someone who has been long railed against that kind of storytelling, I think that is the biggest compliment I can give the movie. Is you made me like a thing that I actively don't enjoy very much.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, it's just it is that. It is the kind of film that just you're sitting there going, what the fucking hell, man?
Yeah.
Wait, and this cost $70 million less than the Marvels? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's not a knock on Marvel. I just think that like there are certain filmmakers right now that studios should be asking questions like, hey, how do we not spend as much money as we did and get what you got out of this? Because this movie was like $190 million. It wasn't even a $200 million movie, and it looks better than fucking anything.
I know, yeah. Yeah, I definitely like this one much better than part one. The only other last little thing that I will say is some moments are more heavy-handed than the book is. I, when reading, found characters to be more reserved and manipulative, and I found that to be a very intriguing read. And I understand that those kinds of things don't always translate to screen, but I think you did bring it up where there are sometimes just moments where we're yelling.
Yeah.
And it was done well, and I think it had the right impact, but I do think that some of those moments were a little bit heavy-handed in comparison to something like the book.
I think that one of the reasons for that is that Frank Herbert wrote a second novel because he was worried that people didn't get the point of Dune. And I think Denis Villeneuve might have been trying to be like, oh, we're going to be a little heavy-handed so that we get what Frank Herbert was trying to do with the first book right the first time.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
He was trying to lean in on...
yeah, and that very well could be it. I obviously enjoy, like, subtlety in storytelling sometimes, but also I would rather that the audience knows that, like, genocide is bad, which
weirdly,
I think for some reason people need to be reminded of.
I am already seeing the like, pro-Paul Atreides movement.
Oh, I know.
And I'm like, no, we missed it again. Oh, no.
I know.
You guys know he's wrong.
Yep.
False prophets are bad.
It's the same people who say Aaron Yeager was right. It's...
Oh, yeah, no. Horrible.
It is scary.
But the narrative cushions them by being like, well, no, the future told them that it would be worse if they didn't do this. Which is why those stories don't work for me. But this version of it, just because the acting is so damn good, the sound design is... unreal.
Yes, my favorite thing about the movie, I can't believe I forgot to say this, the sound design... was like immaculate. I cannot say anything about it other than holy shit.
Yeah.
It kind of scared me sometimes. Or just like, and you're like, oh god, okay. But, yeah. Like out of the blue, and I'd be like, holy
just suddenly
shit.
Starts yelling. The other thing I will say, if you're a light sensitive person, this movie is harsh. They hard cut from... They'll be in the dark for like 10 minutes. And then they will hard cut to the brightest white. And maybe on like a normal movie screen, it wouldn't bother me.
Maybe, but I flinched
we were in like Ultra
so
AVX.
many times.
And I was literally like, oh my... It felt like I should have worn an eye patch over one eye and done the pirate thing where like I used one eye to watch the dark scenes and then like move the eye patch for the bright scenes. Because the hard cuts to the sun, I was like, Denis, give a brother a warning, my man. Like, oh my god.
That one was harsh, but I think maybe it was exacerbated because we were in IMAX or Ultra AVX.
One of the things I want to call out, there is a sex scene. There's not really a sex scene. There is a post-coital scene in this movie between Paul and Chani that is a perfect example of something I was talking about in our Mistborn conversation.
Yeah.
Not just, no spoilers for Mistborn, but I think that there are ways to show that characters have a healthy, intimate relationship without having to show the sex itself. And I think that this scene between Paul and Chani was a perfect example and was so well executed, very well acted. It was a perfect example of how to show that these characters have an intimate life that is healthy and consensual and like built on their trust for one another without us having to watch the whole sex scene. And I would like for more movies to do that. I think that I understand there's a big part of the audience that does not want to watch sex scenes, and I totally understand that. To each their own. I think that I don't want to see human intimacy thrown out because sex scenes are less popular now. And I want to see media represent healthy relationships and healthy, intimate, physical relationships between couples. I think it's an important part of the human experience. And I just thought this movie was an excellent way of doing that without being titillating, without being like leery or it's not about either of their bodies. It is so close up on their faces and the sweat and the heavy breathing in that like post moment. And it wasn't sexual, but it was about their sex life in a way that really I thought was excellent storytelling.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It was well done.
Yeah, mild criticisms aside, this movie's like a 9.8 out of 10. Like it really is. It might be one of the best made movies ever. Whether you like it or not, that's going to be on you, right? I think that there's going to be a huge faction of people who think that this movie is trash because it's long and it's slow and it plays in some themes that I think people are not going to have the patience to get through to the end on. And especially once this gets into in PVOD, I think you're going to see a lot of the audience of the like TikTok, Twitter commenter people being like, I turn it off after 30 minutes. And I see those people coming, and I totally understand it. This isn't going to be for everyone, but whether or not you like it, it is almost perfectly made. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It never felt like it cut corners in any way. It did exactly what it set out to do.
Yeah.
So.
Except it didn't have a 2-year-old murder the Baron, which I was disappointed in, but that's fine. We're in spoilers, we can say that.
Sure.
Aaliyah's not born in the movie, and she's not a creepy little child that murders the Baron. Paul gets to do it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I personally love the little kid who played Aaliyah in the original film. She's so creepy and adorable, and
I still need to watch that.
It's great. It's so fun. It's so like Patrick Stewart's awesome in it as Gunny. Like I love that movie. I'm a big David Lynch Dune fan, which colored my experience of the first one. I think having seen part 1 and part 2 now, I do prefer this version of it, even with the changes that they've made. Watching Lady Jessica like talk to her belly was hilarious for so much of the movie.
Yeah.
But I also am like, in this version, would a talking 2-year-old have worked? I don't know. You know, like I think that might have ruined this. And so they probably made the right choice.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a weird idea.
The
baby gets born with the memories of all of her ancestors.
Look, Dune is weird. Dune is weird.
Yeah.
Like, that is widely accepted.
Well, and it gets so much weirder.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how far they're going to go with what's coming.
We'll find out.
Like, does the next... I don't want to spoil the books. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel. We certainly like the movie. If you don't, hit the dislike button. Leave mean comments down below because the algorithm god is hungry and we must feed her. This episode, that algorithm goddess is probably Zendaya.
Yeah, she ate.
She ate. No crumbs. She's great. She's really good in this movie. If you want to follow us around the internet, you can. I'm at Nerdy Nightly.
I'm at Claris Polaris.
Do something nerdy tonight and, go see Dune after we just spoiled a bunch of it.